Let's turn it on. Why don't we begin? Thank you all for attending. This is the Wednesday, July 31st, 2019 meeting of the Town Government Study Committee. First item of business, may I please have an approval of the agenda as written?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. So then the other item, next item on our agenda is a public hearing to discuss the topics before the Town Government Study Committee. Thank you all for attending on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. And so I think just very briefly, I think you may or may not all know us, but we are the Town Government Study Committee. We've been appointed over the last 2 years or so, and it is our charge per the charter to review it every so often and make recommendations at town meeting and to the select board about the way that government is functioning and any revisions that may or may not need to be made as it relates to the charter and sort of the function of government. I'll just introduce our committee very briefly. We have Tucker Holland, Linda Williams, John Brescher, Christy Ferrantella, Rick Atherton, Campbell Sutton, and we've been working diligently over the last 2 years or so with fact finding, so to speak, interviewing members within the town, going on a rather educational field trip to Falmouth to look at their form of town government and how it may or may not be implemented here, or the pros and cons of it. We've provided some handouts for you at this time. They're up at the table. They're also available on our website, and effectively they're sort of twofold. One is the sort of the update that we gave at town meeting of saying what we've been tasked, what we've been doing over the last few months, et cetera. And I'll go into that in a minute. And the other is that the sort of exciting topic that we've been talking about is the form of town government here. And so we have an overview of the various forms of town government available in Massachusetts, between cities and towns, and then it's a double-sided copy. And on the second side are the 4 forms that are available. Just so there isn't any confusion, I don't believe we have the size of a city, and therefore mayoral is not available, but we just are listing it on there so everybody's aware of what exists out there. But going back to our committee, what we've been doing over the last few months, and again, this is just sort of a precursor of what's been going on. We've been looking at the charter. We've been interviewing department heads. We've been interviewing members of finance committee, other boards and committees as well. And so there are more or less 3 tiers of what we're looking at. The first is sort of syntax changes to the charter. We're consulting with town council about updates that may or may not need to be made as they relate to Mass General Law, making sure that the charter is, for lack of a better term, up to date with the current rules and regulations, and making sure that if we're ready to change every reference from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, we do so. Things like that. The next sort of level of review that we're doing would be sort of, I've been dubbing it sort of tangible goals. And it would be, after talking to members of the select board and town administration, et cetera, things that we could implement within the charter, such as creating a licensing board or a board of sewer commissioners, which would relieve some of the burden of the select board and put and sort of delegate the responsibility that way, and we'd formally implement it by changing the charter. We think those shouldn't be especially controversial. They seem to be pretty well endorsed by the by town administration and the select board at that time. And then the third set is we've been hearing from some members of the public and from various committee members and town officials about sort of the way that government is functioning. as it stands right now, and what is sort of is and is not working. And within reason, our scope is to affect the charter, is to look at how this could relate to the charter. And by that I mean that it's the form of government, it's the structure of it. Some of the issues that may or may not have come up are managerial in nature, just sort of things that would need to be that could be implemented by town departments to make things run more efficiently, quicker, that don't necessarily need a charter change. One suggestion that we heard was basically setting up a sort of a roadmap for aggrieved persons so that they know if their building permit is denied or if they have an issue with health department, who to go to, what the process and procedure is. And something like that, I think, would help citizens, both voting and non-voting taxpayers as well, sort of have a clearer roadmap and better view of what government can and cannot do and where they should or should not go accordingly. And then the other question and sort of the overlying question that we've been grappling with sort of from the 10,000 square foot view is the local government working appropriately? Is it functioning? And to that, we've been looking at our form of town meeting. And so that is the other handout that we have of the various forms of town government, whether we currently are in open town meeting. Then sort of the next one would be representative town meeting, and then a town council, and then a mayoral form of government, which, given our population size, I don't believe we're eligible for. So that's where we are right now, and that's what we've been doing, and we've been hoping to get some input from the public on sort of any and all topics as they relate to government, so we can take and digest them and see what can and cannot be done through charter revisions or recommendations to the select board saying, hey guys, you may want to set up a that informational sheet of where you go if you're aggrieved or whatnot. So we really, and other committee members, if you have anything to chime in at any time, please feel free to do so. And members of the public, I believe the microphones are on. Unfortunately, we don't have one to pass around, but there's one up there and there's one on the other side. If you have any questions or any discussion points you'd like to raise with us, please, this is what we're here for today. Don't all jump in at once. Mr. Drake. For the record, please just.
No. I will not pick them up.
Yeah, I think we need to have you from the mic if you don't mind. And if you.
Someone say that there was a mic that didn't work.
Oh gosh, I hope. Let's.
Someone say the right hand or no. Okay.
This one does. This one always does.
Let's tap it to see.
Maybe if they weren't up against the wall.
So
This one always does.
for the record, sir, if you wouldn't mind announcing your name, that would be terrific.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, as far as we know, this is being recorded.
Yes, thank you. I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. It is being
The NCTV guy was here.
NCTV. We are audio and video.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Daniel Drake. I'm here because I am chairman of the Airport Commission. I am not here representing the Airport Commission because we have not formally discussed this or taken a position on it. So I want to make that very clear. Running an airport, a busy commercial airport, is a real challenge with the present form of government. And the reason for that is that everything we do in terms of spending money has to be approved by town meeting. So we're running a business and, trucks get flat tires or other emergencies come up where we need to be able to spend money on something. And if we have the available cash somewhere that hasn't been appropriated, something needs to be done to make it easier to do that rather than a once-a-year town meeting or even twice a year with a special town meeting. We ran into a problem last year with the October 2018 town meeting because there was a pot of money available from the FAA for $1 billion for airport repairs and improvements. And we had an item for a new taxiway, approval of a appropriation for a new taxiway of about $20 million, but there was no quorum. So we could not get it approved. So we lost out on that pot of money. And now we're scrambling to try and find other sources. I think Nantucket is the only town with a commercial airport in the Commonwealth that is subject to the town meeting form of government. The Vineyard is subject to the Dukes County Commission, and I'm not sure exactly how that works, although I know there's a lot of contention. Barnstable, Hyannis is a town council form of government. Worcester is a city.
Right.
Boston is Massport. Provincetown, I guess, is also probably subject to town meeting. But those are the commercial airports in the state. And we are the second busiest airport, even still, commercial airport in the Commonwealth, even with the reduction, the problems the fast ferry has created for the airlines. And we need the agility and the ability to move fast when certain situations arise. And if you're able to do it with a monthly town council meeting, for example, our lives would be much simpler. The finance director has been very accommodating with us when we sort of need to borrow on full faith and credit to get something done. Sure. There are processes with the FAA, with the state, to get reimbursement for these things. Sometimes it comes as a surprise. The state will come up with a pot of money. It's a nice surprise, but it still has to be dealt with. We have to be able to match our portion of it, which in those cases is often 20%. Or if it's a Fed project, we have to still come up with 5%. So we need to be able to react to a situation, and it's virtually impossible to do it with the present annual town meeting form of government.
I have some question.
Sure. Thank you.
Dan, does the fact that you have an enterprise fund, does that help you react quicker?
No, as my understanding, it makes it worse.
Okay.
And don't hold me to this. You can verify it with somebody else. But my understanding is when we didn't have an enterprise fund, the airport commission would not have to go to town meeting for appropriations. That's what we've been told. So
Okay.
that's something.
I
have no idea what's involved in taking down an enterprise fund or anything like that. But
so just the fact that you have enterprise fund forces you to town meeting?
That's my understanding.
All right, one other question.
Linda, could we
Flesh that one out.
Linda, could we just hold 1 second on that question? Because it wasn't clear to me that that's exactly what Dan said.
That is what I said, Mr. Atherton.
So you've been told by persons unnamed, just to be clear, that if you were like a department or other kind of separation as opposed to an enterprise fund, it wasn't clear to me exactly how you were referencing.
I think it's the Airport Commission under Chapter 90, Section 50, whatever it is, has authority for the management and control of the airport.
Right.
And we've been exploring. I mean, last fall when we ran into this problem with the $20 million, we've been exploring whether there were alternatives. It's not the first time the question has come up.
Yeah.
And so the question is, if the airport has this control, why is it subject to town meeting for appropriations? And the answer we got was because it's an enterprise fund.
And where did you get the answer, Mary?
From our counsel, who is David Mackey of Anderson and Krieger, which is a firm that represents a number of municipalities, and also he was chief counsel to Massport.
It's just helpful to understand that, Dan.
Right.
Yeah.
I was told at one point, I don't even know who told me that the airport didn't have to go to town meting. This was some years ago.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, didn't have to go, period.
I don't think that's, well, we asked that question specifically, and the answer was I just
We still
stated.
have to go.
Because we are an enterprise fund, we have to go to town meeting.
Now, it's not so much the fact that we have a select board that's causing the problems with your being able to react quickly. It's the fact that you simply have an enterprise fund.
No, it's the problem that annual town meeting appropriates the funds to be spent from the enterprise fund. We can't spend them without that
But
appropriation.
if no enterprise fund and maintaining the current board of selectmen, I don't care what they call themselves, then you wouldn't necessarily have to go to town meeting.
As long as we were operating in the black.
Interesting.
So I think that's the kind of thing, it seems to me, that we need a way to verify, either through having your counsel talk to us along with KP Law.
I think that's right.
So we get the facts, because it sounds to me like, maybe it's difficult to get out of an enterprise fund. I doubt if it's that difficult.
Yeah, I
So,
don't think so.
and if
I
it's
have no
important,
idea.
then it ought to be doable.
Right.
What ultimately, if we get out of the enterprise fund and you have the ability to react quicker and address the issues that you have and get funding from the FAA, because it comes up every once in a while, they have this pocket of funding. It's not the first time we haven't been able to get there. What would the town's oversight be? Because there've been problems way in the past, so people are a little skittish about having no control over it and no oversight ability. What would remain as far as oversight if the town meeting wasn't involved?
That's a fair question, and I think my recommendation would be, rather than exploring the elimination of the enterprise fund, would be probably for that very reason to go to the town council form, if that's reasonable.
So it'd either be change the form of government from select board to town council.
No, it's from select board to, from annual town meeting to town council.
That would be.
No town meeting.
Right. No town
No
meeting.
town
No
meeting.
getting off town
So it's
meeting.
either
So
no
the
town
council
meeting
does
or
it.
get rid of the enterprise fund.
Right.
We may have a better shot at getting rid of the enterprise
That's
fund.
possible. I don't know. That may involve a town meeting vote too.
Quite right.
So.
I think
Well,
just,
this is interesting.
Linda, just to be clear on your other question about how would the town interface, if you were truly separate, let's say, Dan, it seems to me and you only spent the money you raised through fees and so
Right.
forth, then the issue only comes up if you run a deficit and need to borrow money from the town. And as long as you don't, otherwise the town would have to appropriate and approve such a loan transaction.
Right.
Or however it was structured.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we originally, Jack was on the original town council, the original town charter discussion about the airport commission. Bernie Grossman was still alive. Alan Reinhardt was on it. There were a few other people that were on it with us. This is going back 20 years. We did talk about oversight of the airport commission. Obviously nobody's there now that was there then. And we did talk about, how does the town maintain some sort of control? Do we exercise complete control? Do we have the form that we have now? Do we back off and let the airport do their thing out there because they got FAA and everybody else all over them all the time? We sort of came up with the thing in between. I think that's where the enterprise, if I remember, Jack, that's where the enterprise funds came into being, was when we did the original charter. Because that was the one way to maintain some control over things. As you know, since that's done, there's been a lot of stuff transpired. You guys are now running okay. I think people that are around back then are still a little skittish about that.
Well,
but I think you need to be able to operate where you need to be operating.
Yeah, I don't want to rehash the old history.
No, but that's why the people are skittish about
Yeah,
that.
no, I understand that, and that's why I just said that I thought the town council form with the enterprise fund would be fine.
You could react more
We could react
Right.
to
in a timely manner.
Right.
Put it
That's
this
right.
way, because you're not right now.
Not just twice a
The Affordable
year.
Housing Trust Fund, we were created to be able to react instantly and not under an enterprise account. We have our own account and everything else, so we can operate and react tomorrow if we had to. That's sort of what you're looking for, is to be able to react in a timely manner and avail yourself of
Yeah,
financial
30 days is
funding.
much better than 280 days.
Or having to call a special town meeting, which obviously didn't work for you because
right.
we didn't have enough
Right.
people there to, those 3 articles, I believe,
Right.
didn't go
Yeah,
forward.
that's correct.
Well, this is an interesting discussion.
Yes.
Just to the one other point, if I may, and this is on the matter that's on your website about I don't know whether you've dealt with it or not, the sort of bringing the airport and the water company under town administration. If I may comment on that,
Please.
that's what Chapter 90 is all about. Basically, it separates the two, and I mean, there's some very practical reasons for that, as well as management reasons, if you will, because I mean, for example, we have a fire station out at the airport, but those firefighters do all kinds of other things besides fight fires. Hopefully they don't fight any fires, but they occasionally do. And so, I mean, the cross-training, we have fortunately very good relations with the unions out there. But I would hate to get to be part of a bigger union, for example, that ended up being not particularly have the airport's interests at heart. But I do think that if again you talk to somebody like David Mackey, he'll tell you that Chapter 90 doesn't permit the administration of the two groups to be squashed together
Under state law.
under state law.
Because I've got to be honest with you, there have been several discussions over the last couple of years of rogue airport, rogue water company, because of the new building, all this other stuff that's going on. And people don't have necessarily an accurate concept of Chapter 90 versus the charter, versus town administration, versus board of select board. I mean, it gets a little muddied as to where we can and cannot go.
Well, the reason for this and the reason for the separation basically is that the tendency, and it's happened here, not recently, but it's happened here, there's been a tendency for town governments to try and get their hands on the funds that belong to the airport,
And what you do with them.
to use them for some town purpose, not airport purpose. Now that's there's some things called the grant assurances that come from the FAA that both we and the select board sign every time we get a grant that prohibit that. But the closer you get the two, the greater the temptation is to start putting your hands in people's pockets.
Or telling you what to do with the money, like the
telling you
water
what-
company, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
If you'd like me to arrange something with,
I think that would be great.
why don't we talk about it?
That would be wonderful.
Okay, I'd be
This
happy
is
to
a
do
big
that.
change.
Yeah, and it's good to hear. Frankly.
Okay.
And this is something we absolutely have to consider at this point, especially when we lost FAA funding and you were subject to the special town meeting not having a quorum. That is a problem.
I can see the day when annual town meeting may not have quorums. That's going to be a real problem.
Yeah, we haven't had that yet. We've been close. Remember, we've been on the phone with all of our people, get people to come to town meeting, sitting in the town meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Tucker, do you want to go over the boards at this time, or do you want to save that for the
More
end?
people.
We want to do some more public comment
Yeah.
first.
Well, why don't we, if there's some other public comment.
Yeah,
then
please.
we could do that. But please don't leave before a
Yes.
small exercise.
There's a quiz at the end.
What's that?
I have grandchildren waiting.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Gary Beller. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers, but we haven't had a formal vote for us to take a position necessarily. I just tell you what the...
What's your name again?
Gary Beller,
How do you spell it?
Beller.
Thanks.
And, but certainly I can tell you the sense of the feeling from the non-voting the seasonal people here is that town government is not working very well. We watch with dismay when we're away off season, what happens at the annual town meeting, and we watch with dismay when well thought out recommendations approved by the Finance Committee and others get turned down at the last minute, so our roads aren't fixed and a lot of things that should get done. So I guess I have a couple of questions. One is, it might be of interest, with respect to the town charter, if we were to choose whoever we is, it would be the voters, of course, not the seasonal people. If we were to choose to go to a representative form of government, does our charter permit us to do that, or do we have to go and beg to Massachusetts legislature to let us change our charter? That's one question I have. Second one I have is, short of that, to solve Dan's problem and maybe some of these other issues, is there a way that our charter would permit us to give the select board far more authority to make financial decisions so that we don't have to go to the annual town meeting for each little expenditure of funds? I mean, the select board they're elected, and if they make bad decisions, then when their term comes up, somebody else will be chosen. But as long as we have that select board, I'm frustrated when they are limited to how much help they can give, and we have to go back to the annual town meeting. So I don't know if our charter permits us somehow, or how would we go about raising the authority of the select board so that they can make a lot of these financial decisions. And some significant ones, of course, will have to go to the annual town meeting, and they'll get messed up as usual because nobody shows up. They show up for their zoning piece, and then they all leave, and nothing gets done. Not much gets done. Anyway, thank you for listening to me.
It's my understanding.
Thank you, Gary.
Rick, you can probably chime into this better, but it's my understanding that so long as we have a board of selectmen or a select board or whatever it's called, we have to have town meeting, a town meeting, whether it's representative, which we've talked about quite a lot, or whether it's this, what we're doing right now, which for me, it's not working well at all. So it's my understanding that if you have a board of selectmen, you can only give them so many powers under state law. They can't run amok with spending all kinds of money without an appropriation by town meeting.
I think another way to think about that is that we exist at, I like to say, the sufferance of the state. And they set the rules by which we operate. And what sort of Linda is saying is that they require town meetings to do certain things. They don't allow us to give that kind of power to the selectmen. And so you can choose a different form, which may get a little closer to what you're talking about, Gary, but it's not going to get all the way. You have to remember, even with, hopefully I'm right here, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but with a representative town meeting, a lot of issues still go to the ballot box. So that, and when you talk about, I would just caution us all, including our group, anybody else, to try and distinguish between things that are really charter related and things that are citizen controlled related. So the citizens, for example, if you referred to fixing our roads, voted against borrowing the money to undertake the roundabouts, not the Board of Selectmen. And the citizens' right to do that wouldn't change under a representative town meeting. Right. And even in Barnstable, I'm pretty sure they vote, for example, they had a big hullabaloo for many years about their fire station, and it had to go to a ballot. So the ballot often is more important in that sense than the Board of Selectmen or town meeting. So.
And remember, we're under Prop 2.5, and some of these things that were required were debt exclusion or overrides.
Right. Yep.
Those must go to the ballot. The selectmen can't pass an override. At least this form of government cannot pass an override, because that's controverting Prop 2.5, where you can only raise your taxes 2.5 without a year, without
right.
all the rest of the hoorah going along with it.
And it's very interesting to go back in time, and I wasn't in Massachusetts at the time, 2.5 was adopted, but there was a time where essentially you could just raise taxes without going to a ballot and that kind of thing. And that caused all kinds of problems. Whether people really want to consider going back to that, because if you could do that, you could use the money to fix you could just raise taxes 50%. I exaggerate to make the point, and you could fix a lot of things. But I think that, having that kind of sort of break is probably a good thing under most circumstances. So.
And that's statewide. That's not just us.
Right.
But I appreciate what you have to say
Yeah.
about it, though, because it was a travesty. We're gonna split those warrant articles up individually this time. So the Boulevard, Okra, that can get done on its own, because they already voted for half of it, and they did it. And some of the other ones are absolutely critical that they get done. So if we split them up at town meeting, sometimes it's how it's represented at town meeting, how the warrant article is packaged. And unfortunately, there were several of them in one article. There's a lot of people who were in favor of Lover's Lane, Monahasset, but not in favor of a rotary here or a rotary there. And if they're split up, it's obviously going to increase the number of warrant articles, which is in itself a burden for a lot of people to show up more than one night. That also has a problem, because everybody doesn't come back the second night. So there are a lot of dynamics with town meeting format that we've been wrestling with for 2 years now.
Have they been changed successfully?
Yes, there are representative town meetings. We've talked about it.
Right.
Some of us have been over to Falmouth to look at how they're operating, and I'm sure we'll keep going with these little
Yeah.
fact-finding tours. They had a lot of people that were in favor of representative, and some found that they lost something with representative. So it's a question of how you do it and how you sell it.
Yeah, we heard of the Falmouth example, and we thought that could make a lot of sense for Nantucket.
It could. It's a question of how, we spent all day there. It was a question of how to implement it here, because they have, obviously, they're 4 times the size of our district.
They have
But they
30,000
also-
people. I remember what John told me, 30,000 people and 238 representatives. So I figured Nantucket will have
About that,
10,000 voters, and so we'll get about a third. We'll have 80.
if not more, because we have to deal with Brant Point, which has 3 year-round people.
That's
And we have
right.
to deal with Wauwinet, which
Brant
may
Point.
have none.
Right.
And we have to deal with Squam, which has some, because
Well, I
Rick is in
think- I mean, I
Squam.
think we're getting into the weeds on this.
So
Yeah.
that's where we went. We
Yeah.
went over to Falmouth to figure out how that worked for them, and if we could extrapolate that for here.
I don't think we're here I think we're here to hear more than to,
Right. To
it out.
solve, no.
we can have dialogues at a regular meeting, but a public hearing, I think, has a certain structure that we ought to honor to the extent we can, not to turn people off, but.
But we have talked about it.
Yeah, just want to encourage you.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any other members of the public?
Hi, I'm Brooke Moore. Oh, I got a little close. I'm curious about representative town meeting particularly in relation to the ballot box questions. And it seems to me that if you have a subset of people who are highly engaged and communicating with the people in their district, as it were, we might have a better communication to the larger community when it comes to the things at the ballot box. Because I think, I know from my experience this year, we had Tobias and Rick's article on housing, and this often happens that when we get to town meeting and we're in the room together and people, make the arguments in favor of something and it passes, and then there's a small group of people who don't want to pay for anything, that are really good about getting out to the ballot box. And I found that in the conversation online, in particular, leading up to the ballot date, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what those ballot measures mean. There was some talk that if you vote it down here, the town will find the money somewhere else. And a lot of misinformation. So I think in my mind, I see a logic of if you have 80 or 100 or 120 people who choose to be highly engaged, then they're out talking to people, and that may increase our voter turnout at the ballot box and have a better representation of what actually happens at town meeting, which is people say, we need the roads fixed. The rotary might work. We'd like to try it, as opposed to just no tax, no tax.
Right.
So,
I want to circle back to what we learned in Falmouth just
Yes.
quickly.
Thank you.
We did learn that their reps are pretty active, because they have to have, the town clerk runs that whole meeting thing. They have to have their area meeting, and they have to get all the information out, whether you're non-voting or whether you're voting whoever's in your district. And you have to get the information out. You're required to have a meeting with your people. so they understand what's happening, and members of the public are allowed to come and sit there, not vote, but they're allowed to come and have a voice at representative town meeting. So it seemed to make an awful lot of sense because there's so much oversight from the town clerk's office and the representatives and their constituents in their zones, that it seemed to make a lot more sense, and it seemed to bolster what you just said about disseminating information, whether you're here or you're not here, because you have to represent everybody because you're 75% of our tax base.
And an interesting point about that too is that the representatives are elected, that they are accountable to their constituents as well.
So I would say underlying all of it is education and communication. And I personally, and I know we're not supposed to talk like this, but personally, I think that our form of government would work well when people are not in an adversarial relationship with the governing bodies, and when they are educated. I mean, you're always going to have naysayers because that's just, part of the percentage of a population, right? But so I'm just sort of noticing that one of the things that comes up with through this representative piece is that people need more information. They need more accurate, correct information.
And just to chime in on it, that's been a theme that we've been looking at throughout our process, even for those as it relates to town meeting and as it relates to departments and just citizens interacting every day with the town and various departments. That it'd be good for all the citizens to be educated, or at least have a roadmap of what to do so they can be educated. Yes, sir.
I wanted to chime in on that because it's a theme. I'm sorry. My name is Doug Rose, and I'm a seasonal resident in town.
ROSE?
ROSE.
Thank you.
And I'm glad I didn't catch your name. I'm sorry.
Oh, Campbell.
Campbell, thank you. I totally agree with your observation. I do think that there's a segment of any population that's just there to whine and moan and whatever.
And vote no.
And vote no for whatever is being advocated. I think one of the solutions to that, from my perspective, would be to make it easier for people to get engaged and informed. And I can't remember who brought it up earlier, but there's this thought that we want to make sure that it's more transparent to people how they can bring up an issue if they're aggrieved. I would add to that, bring up an issue if they want to be involved, if they want to provide a solution, if they want to just learn more. That's the mode I'm in right now, is I'm just trying to figure out how this place works, because I have lots of opinions, but I don't really quite know how to either advocate for them, who to talk to, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just kind of maybe adding a little bit of wind to what you just brought up, Campbell. I think the more we can trust that there are lots of people with genuine, sincere interests in the public good and want to do whatever they can to help that happen. I do think that some people who aren't sure how to get engaged will then tend to just not be engaged and become part of the silent majority that really doesn't contribute to the island that much. There was one other thought I just wanted to throw out there, just as a thought bubble for you to consider as you weigh all the pros and cons of various other forms of government. I do feel as though there is always going to be a risk of those people who want to be engaged, perhaps getting engaged for the wrong reasons, meaning they have an agenda. They have a self-interest that they want to promote, as opposed to a sincere public desire to help the island be better, more sustained, all those good things.
We see it every year at town meeting, special interest groups, their little block.
Yes.
They've got a personal vendetta or whatever it is for an agenda.
Right.
Every year there are several warrant articles that are put in like that.
And it's easy, I can imagine, on an island this size, for interest groups like that to organize and to get very vocal. And it doesn't take a lot of people to become a pretty big force, pretty vocal force in an island like this. So, we all have our own points of view. I guess I would just ask that as you're thinking about the pros and cons, even in like a representative government, which does sound appealing to me, I'd want to make sure that there's some way of assuring each other that the representatives aren't just there to pick a bone. They're actually there to represent a constituency, neighbors, or whatever it is. Hope that makes sense.
Point well taken. Thank you.
If you're elected by, the thing about that Falmouth model, if you're elected by your group to represent, let's say, the Badlands where I live, or Tom Nevers or something along the east or west, they were talking about listening to the concerns of those people in those areas. And if you go against, you have to explain it to them why this would not be a good idea or would be a good idea. You can't just sort of go along like a puppet, but you have to listen to your people, whether they're non-voting taxpayers or voting taxpayers. So it seemed to the communicate, there's accountability because you're elected by your group and you can be removed. I just wanted to add one more thing, because you said that people that aren't involved necessarily, the non-voting taxpayers, and they just don't get involved and they don't contribute. My kids wouldn't have been in school here, so I got to hand it to you guys. And I've got half my family's non-voting taxpayers as well, and I live here. But you guys pay 75 to 80% of our tax base. You guys keep the 120 nonprofits going. You give back in ways far in excess of anything I could ever give back. So I just want you to know that from me, anyway.
Thank you. Tucker?
Well said. Yes. I just was going to say a little bit to Mr. Rose's point. Winston Churchill's observation: democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. So, I mean, there's nothing that we're going to recommend that's going to end up being perfect. And on the count, I mean, I think there are many things that we heard about pluses on the representative side. We did also have a former town administrator come and talk to us, who had experience, obviously, not only with Nantucket, but in that role in other communities and exposure to the representative form. And there were some downsides to the representative form as well. Surprisingly, in some ways, like it protracted voting and resolving the annual issues. Maybe because you have more entrenched opinions. In any event, maybe we will. Do we want to take a few moments now to just talk about this survey,
Yeah,
if you will?
I think that's a good idea.
If there are folks who want to depart, but and our expert,
Take it away.
our expert on the different forms of town government conveniently has skipped today. So I will do my best.
But his paper's here.
His paper
That's
is
right.
here. But so we have we'll put these up at the back. And actually, can I just do a show of hands? How many folks here are seasonal residents? Okay, thank you. So what we wanted to do is, to everyone who attended and who will attend the session on August 14th, we have a couple dots that we want to give to you and get your opinions simply by placing them onto these two boards. So the first board, we basically are asking, or making a statement saying, our current form of governance, open town meeting, volunteer select board, town manager system, adequately meets the needs of our community, Nantucket. And we're simply asking you to place your board, or excuse me, your dot along the spectrum. A 5, that end of the spectrum, says, I strongly agree with this statement. A 1 at this end of the spectrum says, I strongly disagree, and you can place it anywhere in between. So if you are I think we're giving the seasonal residents red and green dots. If you would put your red dot on this board. Similarly, we're going to give the around residents yellow and blue dots. If you would place your blue dot on this board. Then on the second board, we simply are trying to get a sense for where people's thinking may be around the different types of town government. And forget for a moment that the mayoral may not be available to us under our current population. The census is coming up shortly, and we may well qualify for that form of government following the 2020 census. So again, this is really just trying to get some idea if people have an opinion on this. So here we're saying, based on my understanding today, my preferred form of government for our island is our current form, a representative town meeting, still with the town manager and select board, a city or town council and town manager. So a city council that replaces town meeting is elected and the city council appoints the town manager. I think that's the main difference between that and the mayoral system, under the mayoral council system, an elected council and an elected mayor. We've got a column for unsure. You can, if you don't know, if you don't have a preference there, and if you wanted to write a comment in here, we have some Post-its. You could write it on, stick it here as well. If there was something that you, we're clearly expecting about 100 people. But if you want to do, just any comment, suggestion, idea that you haven't articulated at the microphone already, if you wanted to write it and put it on here, we're very interested. So I'm just going to put these up at I'm going to hand out the dots and put these at the back. And before you leave, if you would,
Tucker, if I could just for a minute.
yes.
Also on the comments
Thank
one, we're also looking to gather some information from the public about what times make for good public hearings, good public meetings. It could be the day of the week, Tuesday. It doesn't have to be Tuesday, November 15th or anything like that. What time of day would work best? What season, what month, if you will, or season. So, if you can fill in all the dots, great. And if you just have sort of like, I'm here in the summer, so summer is good or something like that, that would be great. So we can start looking at how we can encourage more people to attend. I think that's one of the ways that we end up with a more educated populace, is when we have meetings that people can attend and are willing to attend. So
Are you
that would be a
guys
start with that.
part of area, Brant Point Association or what are you part of?
Brant Point.
When is your annual meeting? It's coming up.
I think we just had it.
But you usually have two.
It's a board meeting tomorrow, but that's just the board. I think we only have one.
Okay.
We usually have one meeting and then a
Because I'm the one who wrote your Brant Point area plan. But do you have a database we can email out to?
well, the co-president is Susie Spring and my wife Carol Beller. They are co-presidents.
Okay. What's your phone number?
508-680-1117.
Because that's an easy way for us to get the word out, because as I say, you only have when I was working with Barbara Fife and all those guys on writing this thing, you only got 3 people live there year round.
That's the problem.
But we need to hear from Brant Point, because you have issues in Brant Point that the rest of the island does not have, which is why we are very particular about writing the Brant Point area plan.
And same
Are
with the
you
other
part of one
area
also?
plans.
Are you a part of one?
Doug.
What's it? Fair Street. All right, so there isn't one for town at that point?
Yeah, if there is, I don't.
There's a town association. Okay.
Yes, Ms. Moore,
Can I ask a question?
please.
What happens in each of these forms of government if we change to the citizens warrant article?
If we go to representative, nothing.
Right.
Citizens still have the right, under the state law and the charter, on this of any kind of town meeting format, to put in a citizens warrant article for anything they want with 10 votes. Now, the 10 votes is something we've talked about. Now, the number of votes required for a special town meeting and town meeting is
yeah, let's-
set by
Let's not
population
get
size.
too far down that path.
But I brought that up because a lot of people have brought it up because you can put any kind of wackadoodle thing in there with 10 people signing it.
No, you need 20.
It's
How
been
about,
10.
Sometime.
It may have changed because of our population.
Need 20.
does it go away with town council?
We don't have town meeting anymore.
I wouldn't think so. I'm not sure. Truth be told,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question, but if we don't have town meeting, presumably we wouldn't have citizens warrant articles. But maybe there is another means or method
I would
for
be curious
citizens.
about
Yeah,
that,
it's
yeah.
and it's a good question for us to look into
Yeah.
and figure out a response to.
Because we'd have to know what happens to that.
Yep.
Because a lot of people, even if they don't go to
Exactly.
town meeting, they're not giving up that form
Yep.
of government.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that sort of what we allow here is kind of a citizen initiative process. And, whether people want to give that up or are willing to give that up is
Yeah.
a good question. So we'll have to see where that goes.
But the frustrating thing is that some of the loudest voices, I'm talking, please.
Hold on.
Some of the loudest voices are people that want to keep the standard, what we're doing right now, the status quo, but don't go to town meeting on a regular basis. That's what's really frustrating. Change is very difficult on Nantucket, no matter what it is.
Mr. Rose.
I had a related question to your point, and that was in a representative town meeting structure. My understanding is that regular citizens who are not representatives are still allowed to make a statement or
Yes.
comment, or right?
That's
Okay.
that's correct, sir.
There's just a whole section, let's say, up and back at the high school, that's that part of the representative people, which would be obviously down front. And anybody can speak still, no matter who the representative is.
And just as a quick aside, when we were talking to the folks over in Falmouth about the representative town meeting, they do electronic voting. Just
But
as a-
not on a regular basis.
Not-
They said
that's right,
only-
not on a regular
Only
basis.
if it's close or the hand count doesn't work.
Or if
It's not in
if
lieu
they ask.
of raising your hand or saying aye or nay.
But just
But the select board has voted to do this next town meeting with.
Yes.
But it's very
another-
shall
specific.
wait and see.
Another question that I wanted to ask the rest of the board that came up when I met with the Association of Non-Voting Taxpayers last week was if we move to a representative town meeting, could non-voting taxpayers still speak? Could they speak at town
Yeah,
meeting?
they have to be identified.
Yes.
There is a section at the high school way over there to the right, where the band usually sat. So long as they're identified to Sarah ahead of time, and currently, so long as she knows that you're going to be speaking as a non-voting taxpayer, you are allowed to speak at town meeting. And I wish more of you guys would come up here in March or April and have your
Can't just-
conversation.
can't just
I think-
Let's
Yeah.
clarify that, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. And I believe per our charter, oddly enough, there is one designated rep for non-voting
It's not a
taxpayers. who
plural,
can-
it's a
who can
singular.
speak.
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
that's wrong.
That's something else for us to.
So that was my question, is if it was a representative town meeting, could more non-voting taxpayers speak, or would it still be designated to one, or is that?
It's a good question that I'm
question.
not
Change
sure
the
of, that
charter.
we could potentially change the charter in order to do so. But as it stands now, there is one sort of designated rep for the non-voting taxpayers. Oh,
To your point on the, at least from what Linda was
jump right in
saying
over.
earlier, the representative town, under the representative town government, as my understanding from what she was saying, is your representative is talking to both voting and non-voting citizens, right? So maybe some of that
It's
need
translated,
diminishes is what I'm.
as part of the education, yes, that's in theory. Tucker, I think you had something to.
I think Mr. Beller had asked the question earlier, and I don't know if we know the answer, but say there was a recommended change in form of government and town meeting locally approved the change. Do we need the state legislature to act on that?
We have to change our charter.
I'm not entirely sure. It's something we can ask. My gut would say yes, but I don't know, and I don't want to be quoted on that. We can find out.
As far as I can remember, Jack can correct me, as far as I can remember, we are allowed, and we've done it at town meeting already. We're allowed to change certain aspects of the charter.
Right.
It was expressly put into the charter that we're allowed to make charter amendments in certain instances without having to go back to the state. I would think that changing form of government and town meeting would be more in excess than taking some departments and putting them under Libby that were not heretofore under Libby.
Again, that's a sort of a gut visceral reaction to it, but we would certainly check on the actual mechanics and legality of it.
Because the state had to approve both our town and
Yes.
county charters.
Thank you. Any other members of the public care to chime in, discuss? Where are you going to dinner?
Just a reminder, if you haven't signed in on your way in, to please sign in up there and don't forget your dots.
Because a lot of you guys are still here in August 14th, so
Yes, spread the
the
word.
more we can hear from you guys,
August 14th.
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 Because I know the Surfside area thing is coming up shortly, and I've just got to get a hold of whoever's out there for the Surfside one, because that's the biggest organization of the island, Surfside.
Any, Mr. Atherton? You? Fingers crossed.
Go figure.
Any other board members have anything they would care to add?
I found this really helpful, but I want more non-voting taxpayers to be involved with how your money is spent.
Christy?
Yeah, I just thought it was really helpful of everybody we spoke to. We hadn't heard of the airport commission
That's
problem.
absolutely.
So I already think this was really beneficial.
Agreed.
The
think
first thing
times
I
have
thought of is how the NRTA gets their budget through the select board. And I'm not sure if that's in town meeting or only through select board.
That's from the state.
Interesting.
The state actually,
And then-
the state funds us a year after we've already spent the money. Go figure that one
Yeah,
out.
but it's,
But just trying to figure out, is there a way to correlate that to the airport that we could explore?
it is the select board. Yeah.
Ultimately.
But it's a point well taken about these budgetary issues, and that did come up in some of our interviews with I believe our moderator mentioned that.
I don't remember
about-
NRTA coming to town meeting, though. I think that's.
No, the select
No,
board,
but-
the select board
guys.
decides, and then it comes off the cherry sheet, sort of on the top, and we never quite see it, but it's a tax. It's our money going up, and
Their money coming back a
But-
year late, so.
Right, but these budgetary issues are certainly paramount, and
Because
something
clearly when the charter,
we
we did the
need.
charter, we didn't have an NRTA, so the
Right.
selectmen are
Oh,
entirely
sure.
responsible for that one.
Any other comments from the board?
no, I think the one thing we, at a next regular or one after that, I think we can deal with the airport pretty quickly if we get the facts in front of us.
I think
John.
that would be great, and we can check with KP Law
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, because David Mackey should probably talk to whoever's handling this for us, Lauren probably.
I'm not sure this was on the agenda,
What?
talking about how you can solve, I mean, I just think we're getting into a conversation among the board members about a particular item
Fair.
versus,
The public.
right.
It's okay,
A point.
the matter came
Well,
up
it's a
in
good thing
public.
to watch.
A point taken. If nobody has anything else to address at this time, the next item on our agenda would be the date and time of the next meeting. And,
Thought we already had that.
well, we know that, well, the next public hearing, again, tell all your friends, August 14th, same time, same location. But I believe we have a meeting in between,
I thought it was the 12th.
and I think that's correct. August 12th, 1 o'clock
Yeah.
upstairs
Yeah, it will likely be just a short meeting to debrief.
to debrief, recap, see what else we can do to get
Yeah.
more folks out, et cetera. All right, with that in mind, thank you all for
Make
attending.
a motion to
and
adjourn at
Motion to adjourn, please.
2nd.
37.
Okay, motion made in a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you all.
Thank you for coming.